Welcome back to Left, Right and Centre. Let's now talk about the other story. And this is a very, very important observation that has been made by the Madras High Court, by a judge in the Madras High Court. What does he say? The Madras High Court says, and this is Justice Krishnan Ramasamy, he says homemakers are entitled to equal share in property. He says, and I quote, regardless of whose name it is in, property bought with money saved by both, money saved for the property by joint efforts, homemaker does the multi-dexterous job round the clock without holiday, expected to have managerial cooking accounting skills, her contributions cannot be discounted as valueless, husband could not have earned the money without her support, the woman can't be left with nothing after taking care of the family. Now this is a very revolutionary idea. Of course it's an observation, so this is not binding right now, but a very important observation that has been made by the justice. Now what exactly is the significance? Of course we all talk about this, but do we really value what a homemaker is doing or a housewife is doing? You see, the State Bank of India, SBI, a couple of months ago conducted a study. And in their study, they said that if you were to ascertain a value, a monetary value to the work done selflessly by the housewife, then the corresponding amount will be 7.5% of India's GDP. That's the contribution to the economy of the housewives. Unsung heroes. Now the court says they should have a say, an equal share in property. Is it about time that in some form or the other, maybe this or maybe something else, we acknowledge the work and the worth of the mighty Indian housewife? I would like to introduce our guest, Sumitra Goenka, member of the Center for Knowledge Sovereignty. We also have Yogita Bhayana, a women's rights activist, Arnaz Hathiram, founder of Voice for Men India, Abha Singh, advocate and women's rights activist, and Mitali Nikor is the founder and economist of Nikor Associates. Thank you very much. She is also a feminist economist associated with the World Bank and UN Women. Thank you very much. It's a very, very significant discussion that we are having. I can see that I am the odd one out, but trust me, in thoughts and in terms of relating to this, we are all at the same page. I would like to begin with you, Mitali. You see, the SBI in its report said that the total contribution of unpaid women to the economy is around 22.7 lakh crore. This is a staggering amount. Do you feel that the suggestions or the observation made by the court, if this is actually implemented, will do great justice to this selfless act of the mighty Indian housewife?
So, hi Sanket, and thank you so much for having me on the show. Actually, I've written a paper on this, and it starts with the title of Building India's Economy on the Backs of Women's Unpaid Work. So, actually, if we look at the growth rates, and I can tell you this, it started from my own home. When I saw my own mother doing it, taking a back seat because my father was in the IT industry, and there was no way that he could take any time off to take care of me. She made that sacrifice to stay at home despite being an economist educated at the Delhi School of Economics. And you know, this is the story of a whole generation of women who have done that and who have made that sacrifice. But the question before us today is, is it required for another generation of women to make the same sacrifice? Today, if we look at the data, women are doing on average 5.6 hours of unpaid work each day, whereas men are doing 30 minutes. And this is as per Government of India data. We've analyzed the data at Nikor Associates from every angle, across states, across whether women are married or not, whether women are employed or not, whether women are educated or not. And at each stage, we end up with the same kind of gender imbalance and, gender gaps. So it's time that we started correcting this imbalance. Definitely, when these estimates come out of, women contributing up to 7.5% of the GDP, I'm not surprised by that, because just think about the amount of time that goes into it. And that estimation is in fact done on the basis of minimum wages. It's not done on the basis of the opportunity cost that many of these highly educated and skilled women have sacrificed, in order to bring up their children, in order to have their families. But it's important to firstly recognize the economic contribution that women have to men's earning capacity, because men simply cannot go out of the house and work if the women are not supporting them.
Absolutely.
And second, to think about, I'll just complete. Second, to think about the care economy and investing in services and infrastructure to correct this gender imbalance.
Sure. Yogita Bayana and Abha Singh, maybe I can ask this to Abha Singh because this involves a point on legality. Ms. Abha Singh, you see, even if right now, this is how the laws in this country work, even if someone were to transfer the property or have a house in the name of the housewife, the Indian law, and then you go out to take a loan, the Indian law is such that you can't do it because the housewife is not earning, at least not formally. And because she will not be able to produce an ITR certificate or Form 16 or salary slip or bank statement, thus the house cannot be in her name. So do you feel that this suggestion that has come from Justice Krishnan Ramasamy needs to be taken way more seriously? Because right now, even if somebody wants out of his, genuinely if somebody wants to do this, they can't.
I agree with you, Sanket, absolutely, that a woman, if she wants to buy a house, because she doesn't have ITRs, she doesn't have an income, it's always as a gratis, the husband puts her name as a second member. Forget that, I handle a lot of family law cases and I see even where a woman is paying the EMI, even if she's working, when it comes to buying the house because of the patriarchy and she doesn't want to annoy her husband, she voluntarily has a name on the second number and husband on the first. So even if she's paying the EMI, it happens like that. I think if you remember the case Kirti versus Oriental Insurance Company Limited, this was a very famous case where motor vehicle compensation had to be given. A housewife while walking had been crushed, and when they went to the motor vehicle court for compensation, the court said, what they calculated as the income of a housewife as equivalent to a housemaid. So that case, when the bereaved family went to the Supreme Court set it aside and rejected that order and said, no, you cannot underestimate the work of a housewife, and the services provided by the housewife have economic value. This is what the Supreme Court said in Kirti versus Oriental Insurance Company Limited. So now when Madras High Court also comes with an observation, I think all these things should be put together, and frankly, because the court says indirectly the wife is helping the husband to earn his income, to invest in property, so she should be 50% partner to all the property he has. I think this observation, even if it is an observation, it's not in the written part of the order, then also it would definitely impact the mindset of the judges, it would impact the society, and it would really go a long way in giving respect, dignity to the housewife, not only the property.
Okay, I think that's an important point, dignity. But Ms. Yogita Bayana, I'm sure in your service as a women's rights activist, you must have come across a number of cases where the woman finds herself, at a loss completely, financial, emotional, because of a situation in the family. If something's not working out with the in-laws, and then she has no support, no financial support. So how does one make this workable? As we've been discussing, it's nice to feel that something needs to be done, but what do you actually do that will make a difference on the ground? Could you please unmute yourself, Ms. Yogita?
Yes, Sanket, finally this has come into the discourse. That is the first Thanksgiving one can do, and thanks to you for doing a discussion on this such an important topic, and couldn't have been put better than what Justice Ramaswamy has put in. See, we can't do the quantum survey or tangibility of economic contribution of women as housewives, but at the same time, as Amaji also said, that respect and dignity at least we have started getting that, like, as housewives, if I may say so. But quantum has to be decided, and it was due for a long time. That quantum legally will be very difficult to define because it's a gray area. Because when she gets married, so did he started working like that time onwards? What assets he generated? So there are lots of ifs and buts. But working can be done around that, and at least judiciary is being sensitive about it. We can come out with some quantum which is little tangible and which can define the contribution. However, nowadays a lot of women are working. As working women, also they are housemakers. Also, 75% of the work, even if they are working women, is done by them, not their partners. So these are the things need to be addressed and defined. How do we define? It's the challenge. At least discourse has started, and NGOs and activists and the lawyers, I think they need to involve them as stakeholders and do the discourse on that. I think and continue media attention and discussions over it will help it for sure. And it will go a long way.
Ms. Arnaz Hathiram, I want to come to you. You see, in certain religions, you've got the concept of marriage being a contract, right? So then you can have this set in that contract. You can perhaps divide the assets or name properties, and one can understand how that is done. But this is not the case in every religion, right? Marriage is not a contract, but a social obligation or a social understanding. In a situation like this, a proposal versus proposal turning into reality, what are the possible challenges and how can this be worked upon?
So thanks, Sanket, for having me. And let me begin by saying, we are discussing about equality, but we don't have equal representation from the men's side today. So that is ironical, but nonetheless, let me,
not
speak
complaining. Not complaining at all.
Okay. Right. So, let me begin with saying I'm absolutely with all the panelists. When we talk about women getting married, they are compelled in a way sometimes to leave their jobs, to give up their careers. And I know personally a lot of professionally qualified women have done that because, the husband earns more. So naturally it's a collective call that she has to, take a seat back and take care of the family. Now, in these situations where, the women have kind of, stepped back and they have contributed to bringing up a family, taking care of it for many, many years. Certainly, you cannot take away their contribution. You have to give them equal, share in whatever they have done. But the challenge is, Sanket, we cannot overlook the duration in marriage when we come up with these kind of, laws or observations or orders from the courts. We cannot make them as a thumb rule. Let's assume today a man is getting married. He has a property. He's paying EMIs for a property and he gets married. Now, the woman, for whatever reasons, for, the couple is not compatible or for whatever reasons walks out from that marriage within a year. Are we saying it would be fair that she is also legally entitled to 50% of that property? So I think, just to sum it up, the biggest challenge in all our matrimonial laws in India is that, we still want to use the word husband and wife. I think once we start using the term spouse, it will kind of, help us to get rid of all these challenges. If we want 50-50 division of properties like it happens in the West, make it equal. Whatever the husband is earning, if that is 50%, whatever the wife is earning, let that also be 50% and divide. So that's my call as of now on this.
Okay, an interesting point that you're bringing up because, in the context of Dowry Act, we've seen a number of such cases where the men have also been victimized, and there are many people who've been fighting this on behalf of men and their families, the suffering that has happened. Sumitra Goenka, how would you look at this proposal? I understand, see, that's a very important point that Ms. Arnaz raised. What do you factor in to actually implement a proposal like this or an observation like this in real life so that it is not unfair to anyone? Ms. Sumitra Goenka.
Sanket, I think this is a very, very important topic, because first of all, the way women have been looked upon from the past till today, there have been changes. Today, woman is a homemaker as well as she is working outside. But there are some statistics which I wanted to highlight here. Almost 84% of the women working are spent on activities for which they do not get paid for. And if you look on an average day, 300 minutes a woman spends on work for which she is not getting paid for. And if you compare that with a man, then it is only around 30 minutes. So it is a 10 times the woman is, doing a work for which she is not getting paid for. Of course, many a times if you want to quantify this, like our parents, or in the case of our mother or relatives, they will not like to even speak about this subject, or they would not like to think about it, because it is all the love and the affection for which they are doing this kind of work. But having said that, I have seen many women who are suffering because there has been this kind of an inequality where the husband has died and the in-laws have separated the woman from the property, and she has lost the rights to the property because she's just been a homemaker throughout her life. So somewhere this discussion has to evolve, and we need to get at a conclusion. There was once a debate also happening about should there be a notional value attached to this work which a woman is doing, which is not actually quantified, and should this be a part of the GDP? I am not saying that GDP needs to be redefined, but somewhere you need to quantify this, because when you talk about agricultural field especially, you will see that there are a lot of women who are more active in the agricultural fields. As well as in the remote villages also. I had been to Uttarakhand recently. I saw that 90% of the labor was women workforce, and we are not paying them anything productive for their work. So this is something which they are doing on their own because they have small land masses, and there is something which needs to be done. Constructive discussion, maybe the economists have to come in and they have to quantify if there has to be a value attached to this.
Yeah.
Having said this, a GDP comes through only when there is a value, there is some wages.
It's very interesting that you say this, Ms. Goenka, because I just go back to this SBI report, and I noticed that the way they have calculated 22.7 lakh crore as the contribution of the homemakers is when they factor the earning of rural women for working 8 hours a day for a month as only 5,000 rupees, and that for an urban woman is 8,000 rupees a day. Now I think this is very conservative. Maids earn more than this. So the value that you have
and
attached
even,
to homemakers
one more point is
work is so little.
Yeah, and one more point, Sanket, I wanted to highlight, which even Abhaji said, that in the case of road accident, it has been seen that after the death of a woman who is a homemaker, the value was said that, a certain amount, say 5,000 is the value for her each day's work, and then you decide the compensation. So there is a debate which is going on that whether a woman who is right now alive, why can't we even decide some value? Because it's like you said, it's about the dignity, it is about the recognition, it's about the sacrifice. So there are several things which we need to discuss in today's parlance as well. It may not be a conventional way of seeing it, but I think we need to discuss this at a larger level.
Keeping all the reservations in mind, because obviously you should not have a law or a new system in place with the intention to benefit by overlooking its possible misuse. The point that Ms. Hathiram was just making. So Abha Singh, what would you have to say about the possibility of misuse of something like this?
If you come to misuse, then there has been an outcry that 498A dowry laws are misused, then you say maintenance. But let me tell you, in 2020, Supreme Court in this special case, Neha versus Rajesh, even for maintenance and alimony, it has said that the assets and liabilities of both the parties, and both the parties means husband and wife, the assets and liabilities under affidavit will be filed before the family court or the trial court, and after going through both the sides, then only the court will give alimony. In fact, in some cases now, Bombay High Court or Aurangabad bench of Bombay High Court have given husband alimony to the amount of 30,000 a month because the wife was more qualified and she earned more. So at least in maintenance and alimony, these things have been looked into. But where the property comes, it's still ticklish, and I think we are lagging behind. But orders like this will definitely impact, because there was another case in Supreme Court, Lakshmi Bai versus Om Prakash, where Supreme Court said that property division has to be done keeping in mind the contribution, economic contribution of a housewife in the form of housework and other things. So I think
but
there
you
has
see
to be
this
things, and
husband
that's why I
getting
said-
alimony, don't you think that this would, I mean, it happens more often than we think, that the wife earns more than the husband. But the point is, do you feel that this is a dangerous assumption and also heavily stacked against women? Because when you actually start dividing on the basis of assets and liabilities of husband and wife, you would find that the wife will
See,
be at
when
an
on
inherent
one side we are
disadvantage.
fighting for equality, Sanket, when we say Article 14, equality before law and equal protection of laws. So when it comes to assets, they can be divided, and that is why your ITRs, your income. So if a housewife, in fact, if you are a housewife and you are claiming maintenance, then the lifestyle which you are used to, in fact, the law is tilting towards women, and it really favors women when it comes to the family court, because your lifestyle, if your lifestyle is you've been living in Taj Lands End or somewhere like that, that equivalent, courts are giving maintenance to that lifestyle. So even if you're not working, but as a wife, you are entitled to a very good compensation. So the laws are very favoring women, but the manner in which the lawyers are twisting, I can say that would actually depend, and that is why people get the top brands.
And if something like this were to be, which is a very welcome suggestion or an observation by the court, but Ms. Arnaz Athiram, obviously when people draft a policy or a judgment, one would have to keep the possibilities of misuse in mind.
Sanket, I just want to come in over here. Yeah, so quickly rebutting to what Abaji said, Abaji mentioned about this Rajneesh versus Neha 2020 guidelines, which have come in the maintenance orders, but both parties have to submit their income affidavits. Now, what we don't tell our audience is Section 125 CRPC of the maintenance is not gender neutral. It is only and only the wife who is entitled to get maintenance from her husband. And the law is drafted in such a way that even if she's married for one single day, she's entitled to get maintenance from her husband for the rest of her life unless she gets married or with some other riders. So what is happening effectively today is, women are only talking about not having more and more rights in their favor, but we are not trying to fix the inequalities or the injustice which is already happening to men. I can give you several cases where men have been, married for 6 months. The women have walked out, filed for divorce and filed for maintenance under 125 CRPC. For last 15 years, 20 years, they have been paying interim maintenance. When are we going to discuss these issues? So I think if we are discussing about equal rights, equality as far as matrimonial laws are concerned, we must debate and discuss these issues as well.
Correct. Absolutely. Mithali Nikor wanted to come in.
Okay, so I think just quickly reacting to, all of the points, I completely agree that we need to start talking about equality. There are 3 issues here. The first issue is the gender imbalance in the unpaid work itself. And we need to start working on correcting that. In order to start working on correcting that, of course, we need a set of solutions. We need care infrastructure. We need childcare centers. We need centers for elderly care. We need centers for disability care. We need care services to be available. And then on top of that, we need to have more and more men stepping up and taking up unpaid care work. That is an important imbalance which has to be corrected. Second, I totally agree. When we look at the division of assets and the laws around divisions of assets, they have to be based on the duration of the marriage. They have to be based on, the contributions, economic contributions made by both the husband and the wife. And they also have to take into account circumstances in which wives have had to leave their jobs in order to support the family. So all of that has to be clearly defined in a policy and a law, it's the right time to form a committee and decide what should that sort of law, marriage law, look like. But until you correct the inequality on the unpaid care work burden, it's very difficult to say, what about men's rights? I agree that a lot of, laws are being misused, but then we also have to look at
But don't you think that these
investments in
two
care
things are
infrastructure and services.
they're very different? I mean, I agree with
But
you.
they are so interlinked.
For instance, this whole bias among men, you know, when they take care of the children, they tend to call it babysitting. For God's sake, they are your own children. I understand the point that you're making. I know these things
Helping.
exist.
Helping.
But what Ms. Hathiram was saying is very different. It's not about unpaid work. It's about injustice in a marriage. And let there be no injustice
also
for
about-
anyone. Yogita Bhayana, very
then
quickly.
Sanket, I would
Also
say
just
also,
this,
I would say, sorry to come
mind
in,
about
but
we
then
look at
we
women
One by
working
one.
in the
prenup under the UCC, a new UCC is required and a prenup agreement to ensure that marriages are not misused or the marriage laws are not
Yogita Bhayana, last word please.
Sanket,
Running out of time.
I just want to sum up by saying that it is all about the vulnerability and gullibility. Women are more vulnerable because, of course, a man cannot carry the child in the womb. And then, let's face it, I mean, the woman has to rest, she has to deliver a baby, she has to have a post care, she has to feed the baby, So these are the things we have to take it in mind. We are talking about equality, but we need to also see the vulnerability factors, whether of men or women. But at the same time, we have to have some special attention given. Why do we only judge that, okay, extra privileges? By alimony and maintenance, it was discovered. There was a reason. I mean, we are not saying that, okay, just blindfolded, give them maintenance and alimony. There's a discussion happening in the court. So we need to also kind of look into those depths. And as I earlier also mentioned, it's a grey area. One has to have a defined
Okay. I've
quantum.
completely
Sanket,
run
can
out
I
of
make a
time,
last
but thank
point?
you very much, ladies. It was great to have this discussion. I must say, really, really enlightening. Thank you very much for joining us. We have come to the end of this broadcast, but news continues on the other side. Stay.